The Chamber of Stars floated around Admiral Zerath Call, the Dominion's flag carrier rotating lazily in Sol's distant black. His talons tapped the arm of his command throne, a gesture of irritation rather than thought. Report after report scrolled before him. Another captured outpost, another human colony smoldering under plasma fire, another list of casualties dismissed as acceptable. Victories had grown monotonous. Primitive bipeds, Call muttered. His officers chuckled dutifully. They fight like cornered vermin, snapping until the last. At least vermin know when they've lost. An under-officer dared to clear his throat. Yet, exulted Admiral, it is unusual that not one human settlement has capitulated. They destroy their databanks, burn their food supplies, even scuttle their ships. There is little to take except rubble. Call's inner crest twitched, annoyance flashing in his eyes. They destroy themselves, so we cannot enjoy the spoils. That is not strategy, it is barbarism. Soon they will run out of rocks to hide on, and then their homeworld will be ours. The word homeworld lingered, tasting sweet on his tongue. Earth, the original cradle of these stubborn mammals. A prize to be taken, catalogued, stripped. The Dominion had crushed civilizations 10 times older, and humanity's defiance was nothing but a footnote to him. Still, something in the officer's tone irritated him, a faint suggestion that humans resisted differently. Call dismissed it. Plot the incursion routes, he ordered. Sol system is to be pacified within 3 cycles. Let us see if their mother planet resists as foolishly as her children. The officers bent to their work, murmuring, each one too careful to reveal unease. When the Dominion fleet pierced the veil of Sol, expectation rode high. They emerged in disciplined waves of steel and plasma, war banners projected against the void, an orchestra of domination. Earth hung below, blue and green and deceptively fragile. Call's second, Commander Threx, allowed himself a smirk. A water world. Predictable. Soft creatures, always drawn to fragile ecosystems. Plasma lances rained down to sweep away orbital satellites. The Dominion's warships cut through them easily, yet the debris did not scatter randomly. Instead, fragments accelerated, redirected, colliding deliberately into Dominion ships with force far beyond natural momentum. Call leaned forward, crest flattening. Report. Admiral, their defense net appears autonomous. Each destroyed unit is slaving power into kinetic impact. The words cut off as a corvette spun out, hull cracked from a so-called wreckage strike. Call snarled. Tricks. Nothing more. Dropships burned through the atmosphere, streaking over cities with theatrical menace. They expected panic, screaming crowds, governments begging mercy, the collapse of morale. Yet as the first Dominion squad set boots upon human soil, chaos unfolded in ways they had not prepared for. The air itself pressed against their armor with crushing weight. The gravity was punishing, their lungs fought for every breath, and invisible microbes began eating through biofilters within hours. Streets exploded with improvised mines. Civilians, if they could be called that, armed themselves with weapons designed for hunting but wielded with startling discipline. Call's comms filled with broken cries. The atmosphere is hostile. Our filters, our skin burns static. Another voice. They are not fleeing. They are waiting. Gunfire roared. Then silence. Threx's smirk was gone, replaced by unease. Exalted Admiral, casualty reports exceed projections. These conditions are unsustainable. Unsustainable for them. Call snapped, though his chest tightened. We adapt. We conquer. But doubt crept into his mind. This was not a colony hastily constructed from starship wreckage. This was a cradle carved by brutality, seas that drowned, skies that scorched, predators that hunted even in darkness. How had such a world birthed sentience at all? The human counterstrike began, without ceremony. Their signal pierced every Dominion channel simultaneously, calm, steady, unshaken. This is Earth. You have made a mistake. The voice was female, precise, utterly without fear. Not the frantic wailing of a broken species, but the controlled cadence of one who knew her words would be remembered. You thought this was another colony, another outpost to burn. You thought we were unprepared. But Earth is not weak. It is not soft. It is not yours. We have endured worse enemies than you, for longer than your empire has existed. The feed cut to static, but its echo remained in the stunned silence that followed. Call gripped the throne arms until his talons cracked metal. That voice had not pleaded. It had warned. A flicker of unease passed across the command deck. For the first time, Call saw hesitation in his crew, the silent question they were too afraid to ask. What if the humans had been waiting all along? He dismissed the thought, but it lingered like poison. The invasion had begun, yet something in his instincts, honed by decades of conquest, whispered that the war had just turned against them. And far below, on the death world called Earth, millions of humans quietly prepared to prove him right. Call had not expected silence to be so loud. Reports bled across his command screens, each one darker than the last. His fleet had carved its way through outlying colonies with ease, yet Earth was different. Every assault was answered not with desperation but with precision. Every fallen Dominion ship revealed another layer of deception. The humans had not scattered their strength across the stars, they had hidden it. The revelation broke through his command like a toxin. Recon vessels transmitted evidence. Colonies that the Dominion had conquered were little more than stage sets, stocked with hollowed-out infrastructure and seeded with deliberate decoys. Laboratories where Dominion scientists had hoped to plunder data were filled with fabricated research, equations leading nowhere. Every victory had been a carefully arranged illusion, a sleight of hand by a species the Dominion had dismissed as clumsy. Call's claws clenched as the reports unfurled. "They wanted us to come here," he whispered, voice low, almost reverent. His bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. To speak such thoughts aloud was to admit the possibility of a trap. The trap soon revealed itself. Wormholes, thin and sharp as glass slits, opened without warning across the system. Human fleets poured forth, not cobbled-together ships, but sleek, angular constructs, cloaked in shadow until they struck. Autonomous drones swarmed with uncanny coordination, slipping through Dominion shields like knives through silk. Call had commanded battles for half a lifetime, but he had never seen fleets move with such unnerving silence. There were no taunts, no flamboyant maneuvers, no waste of effort. Only execution. On Earth's surface, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of a subterranean command center. Her hair was pulled back in a simple knot, eyes sharp and unblinking as she monitored orbital trajectories. Around her, officers barked updates, their voices taut with urgency, but she remained composed. She was not a soldier in the traditional sense. She had trained as a physicist, a strategist more comfortable with formulas than firearms, but she had become something more when war reached Earth's door. "Admiral Call believes he is still advancing," one officer reported. "But every move he makes is exactly where we wanted him." Elena nodded slightly, her gaze fixed on the shifting map above the table. "Let him advance. A predator does not know it has been caged until the trap closes." Her calmness was unsettling to those around her. Some saw it as strength, others as coldness. For Elena, it was necessity. Fear was the most contagious weapon humans possessed. Left unchecked, it crippled armies faster than bullets. She would not allow fear to seep into her command. Above, Dominion fleets struck back in brute force, raining fire across Earth's upper orbit, but each strike was blunted by the strange geometry of the battlefield. Human satellites blinked into existence, their positions shifting in orchestrated patterns, redirecting plasma fire into empty void. Call demanded explanations, his voice rising with uncharacteristic strain, but none of his officers could provide them. These maneuvers are not improvised," one stammered. "They are anticipations. They know what we will do before we act." Call slammed a clawed fist into his console, sparks leaping from the impact. "No one anticipates me." Yet in his chest, a suspicion coiled tight. Perhaps this was not arrogance from humanity. Perhaps it was experience. The first time he heard her voice directly, Call felt something he had not felt in decades, an involuntary shiver. The transmission cut through Dominion channels with surgical precision, directed only to him. "Admiral," Elena's voice came, steady as stone. "You do not know us. You think you do because you have counted our weapons and measured our colonies. But you have only seen the surface. Every war you fought before us taught you that victory was decided by numbers, by engines, by size. Earth taught us differently. Survival has never been about numbers. It has always been about adaptation." Call straightened in his throne, crest lifting in agitation. "You presume to lecture me, human?" "Not a lecture," Elena replied. "A warning." The channel cut, leaving only the cold hum of Dominion systems. Call tried to laugh, but the sound caught in his throat. The woman's words had not been delivered with arrogance, but with something worse: certainty. Hours stretched into days, and still the Dominion gained no ground. Every advance they attempted bled ships and soldiers. Every weakness they sought in human defenses unraveled into another layer of misdirection. Call studied the reports long into the artificial night, claws drumming against steel, his once proud certainty corroding into doubt. He had called humanity vermin. Now he was beginning to understand that vermin survived precisely because they were impossible to exterminate. His second, Threx, finally broke the silence. "Admiral, if these are their true defenses, then what we have seen until now is only prelude. If this is how they fight at home, what happens when they bring this war to us?" Call turned to face him, and for the first time, his voice lacked conviction. "Then the Dominion will face something it has never known, an enemy that refuses to play the game by our rules." On Earth, Elena watched the Dominion fleet writhe like a trapped beast. Around her, exhausted soldiers dared to hope, but she held their optimism at bay with her silence. Victory was not yet earned. The Dominion was wounded, not slain, and a wounded beast often bit hardest. Still, deep within, she felt the stirrings of grim satisfaction. For years, humanity had hidden, building weapons in shadow, feigning weakness to buy time. Now the time for hiding was over. The trap was sprung, but the war was only beginning. And in the cold expanse of space, Admiral Call began to realize that he was no longer the hunter. Call had never been haunted by silence before. The Dominion's flagships were forged to sing with power, to echo with the assuredness of command. Yet now, the quiet pressed against him like a weight. Every report carried failure. Every statistic eroded confidence. Humanity had turned the skies of Sol into a labyrinth, and each attempt to cut through it only deepened the Dominion's losses. He found himself alone in his quarters, a place he had once treated as sanctuary. Now it felt like confinement. Screens hovered before him, projecting the past, battle after battle, victory after victory. He commanded armies that spanned galaxies, crushed rebellions before they were born. But the more he stared, the more hollow those triumphs appeared. His claws trembled as he commanded the system to display human history instead. He had demanded it to understand his enemy, to know what beast he faced. What he saw unsettled him more than any fleet. The images unfolded, trenches drowning in mud and fire, cities turned to ash beneath mushroom clouds, civilians sheltering beneath bombed-out ruins while still resisting with makeshift arms. Endless wars fought not for empire but for survival. Call had seen empires die. He had watched rulers executed, planets sterilized, cultures burned. But never had he seen a species endure their own catastrophes and come back sharper, harder, more relentless. "They destroy themselves," Call whispered, the thought bitter on his tongue. "And in doing so, they become unkillable." When Threx entered, Call did not hide the footage. His second froze, eyes widening at the screen as the devastation of Earth's past filled the chamber. "They do this to their own kind?" Call's crest sagged. "They are not strangers to annihilation. We mistook endurance for weakness. Every time their world tried to erase them, they endured. And now we try the same." Threx said nothing more, But Call could sense the same unease blooming in him. Fear was contagious, and humanity had sown it in them without a single shot. The Dominion High Council gathered in solemn assembly across light years. Call was summoned to speak, his image projected into the council chamber, where ancient leaders reclined on thrones of living stone. Their voices filled the chamber with practiced disdain. "You exaggerate, Admiral," intoned High Chancellor Veru. "A primitive species has bloodied your nose, and now you speak of them as gods of war." Call stiffened, but did not bow. "Chancellor, I bring not excuses but warnings. Humanity is unlike the others we have conquered. They do not break. They prepare. They set traps generations in the making. If we do not tread carefully, we will awaken an enemy that does not forgive." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some mocking, some troubled. Another voice, Counselor Aerith, spoke with venom. "You dare imply the Dominion is vulnerable? Our fleets are endless. Our technology is supreme. We can smother their world in fire until nothing remains." Call's reply was colder than he intended. "Then you will teach them what they already know, that fire is survived, and that ashes are fertile soil for vengeance." The chamber erupted, accusations hurled, threats veiled as diplomacy. Some demanded his replacement for cowardice. Others whispered of his loyalty fraying under human influence. Call let them speak, but deep within, fear had already taken root. He knew what the council refused to admit. Humanity would not be erased. They would adapt. They always had. On Earth, beneath the weight of reinforced concrete, Elena Vasquez listened to her own counsel. Military officials pressed for a counteroffensive, for humanity to strike into Dominion territory before momentum slipped. Politicians urged restraint, fearing that too much aggression would transform them into the very monsters they fought. Elena stood in the center, silent until the noise ebbed. Her voice, when it came, was calm and cutting. "We have the power to devastate them, yes. But power is not the same as victory. The moment we overreach, we become predictable. Predictability is death." One general slammed his fist onto the table. "They would not hesitate to annihilate us. Why should we hesitate?" Her gaze met his without flinching. "Because we know what annihilation costs. They see only the efficiency of destruction. We remember its scars. We are not trying to become conquerors, we are trying to end this war. And ending is not the same as winning." The room fell still. Even those who disagreed could not deny the truth of her words. Humanity's greatest strength was not its firepower but its memory, an inheritance of survival carved into every generation. Elena carried that memory like a blade, wielding it with a surgeon's precision. That night, she stood alone on the observation deck of the bunker, gazing upward. Beyond the armored glass, the sky was littered with debris, glowing trails of destroyed ships burning through the atmosphere. Humanity's trap had worked, but her heart remained heavy. War had never been her ambition. She had been a scientist, a dreamer of possibilities. Now she was a strategist, sharpening those dreams into weapons. Call, across the Gulf of Stars, stared at the same debris field from orbit. The symmetry struck him, though he did not know why. Two figures, enemy and foe, bound by inevitability, watching the same sky burn. His officers whispered of regrouping, of mustering a fleet so vast that even humanity could not resist. But he knew the truth gnawed beneath their bravado. Numbers meant nothing if each soldier carried fear in his chest. For the first time in his career, Call wondered whether the Dominion's greatest threat had come not from the humans' weapons, but from their history. Humanity had turned survival into an art, suffering into fuel, and war into second nature. To fight them was to fight inevitability. The Council would not listen. Humanity would not relent. The storm was building, and Call could feel its pull like gravity. The war was no longer about conquest. It had become a test of who could endure without breaking. And for the first time, Call doubted the answer. The Dominion fleet arrived in numbers that blotted out the stars. Call's ships stretched from one end of the void to the other, their formation a wall of fire and steel. The council had demanded spectacle, a show of dominance, to remind every corner of the galaxy who ruled. Yet Call stood on his command throne with no pride in his chest. The numbers were staggering, but his instincts whispered of futility. Against any other foe, sheer mass would have crushed resistance. Against humans, numbers only gave them more targets. The first ripple came, without sound. A distortion shimmered across the void like glass cracking in silence. Then another. Wormholes unfolded like dark petals, and from them poured the human fleets. They did not arrive in bombastic surges, but in eerie, precise waves, each emergence calculated to the fraction. Their ships moved as though pulled by one mind, drones swarming in coordinated silence. Call's officers shouted for firing lines, for countermeasures, but his own throat had dried. He had seen this before in smaller clashes, but never on this scale. The humans had transformed Sol's defense into an invasion. The battle ignited. Human drones dove into Dominion lines, weaving between plasma fire, carving holes where warships once stood. Entire Dominion squadrons disintegrated under coordinated barrages before they could even target their attackers. Wormholes snapped open behind Dominion carriers, unleashing strikes at their unguarded rears. Call watched in horror as centuries of Dominion supremacy collapsed in minutes, undone not by brute force, but by surgical precision. From her bunker far below Earth's surface, Elena Vasquez monitored the operation, her expression unreadable. The room erupted with reports of victories, of Dominion losses mounting, but she offered no smile, no relief. She had orchestrated the plan, every maneuver, every strike, every trap, but her satisfaction was muted by the weight of what it meant. Humanity was revealing itself at last, not as prey, not as stubborn survivors, but as predators. She thought of the warnings she had given. Victory, without control, was just another form of ruin. Still, there was no turning back. Call barked orders, his voice raw. Regroup. Cut their flanks. Close ranks. Yet even as he shouted, he knew he was only delaying the inevitable. The humans anticipated his moves with unerring accuracy, turning every maneuver into another snare. It was as though his command deck had been laid bare before them. And then, a thought clawed its way through his mind with chilling clarity. Perhaps it had. Humanity had studied them long before the Dominion noticed humanity at all. The flagship shook under impact. Sparks rained from above as crew scrambled. Call's crest sagged with resignation as he gazed at the tactical feed, ship icons disappearing one after another, the Dominion line collapsing into chaos. His empire had mistaken itself for invincible, and now the illusion shattered before his eyes. He could not deny it any longer. The hunters had become the hunted. Amid the carnage, a transmission cut through the noise. Elena's voice, calm, deliberate, filled Call's ears. "Admiral, this can end now. We have no desire to annihilate you, but we will not allow your empire to rise again on the bones of others. Lay down your arms, and you and your people will endure. Resist, and we will carve away the Dominion until nothing remains." Call's talons dug into the armrest. His pride flared, but pride had no place left to hide. Around him, his officers' eyes were wide with fear, their resolve fractured. They looked to him not as a leader to guide them to victory, but as the one who could decide whether they lived or died. For the first time in his career, surrender was not humiliation. It was survival. He rose slowly, his voice carrying across the bridge, stripped of arrogance, but heavy with finality. "Transmit to the humans. The Dominion fleet stands down." The silence that followed was thicker than any roar. His officers sagged with relief, some openly weeping, others refusing to meet his eyes. Call lowered his head, his voice quieter now. "We thought them vermin. Instead, they are executioners." On Earth, Elena received the signal. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe. Around her, officers erupted in cheers, but she silenced them with a raised hand. "This is not triumph," she said. "It is responsibility." Her words fell heavy, reminding them all that victory brought no peace, only the burden of what came next. When Call was brought before humanity's council weeks later, it was not as a prisoner in chains, but as an envoy. Elena stood across from him, her eyes steady. "You are not our slave, Admiral. But you are not free either. You will govern what remains of your people under our watch. We offer survival, not revenge. Accept this, and the Dominion will endure in a new form." Call studied her, searching for weakness, for some crack in the mask of composure. He found none. He saw only certainty, the same certainty that had crushed his fleets and silenced his empire. Slowly, heavily, he inclined his head. "You do not conquer. You consume." "No," Elena answered. "We adapt. And now you will too." The council chamber fell quiet, the agreement sealed not in celebration, but in inevitability. Humanity had not only survived, they had risen. The galaxy shifted around that fact like a tectonic plate grinding into a new position. Nothing would return to what it had been. Later, alone on Earth's surface, Elena walked among the ruins of a city that still smoldered from the Dominion's first assault. Children played in the shadows of shattered towers, their laughter carrying faintly over the wind. She closed her eyes, hearing echoes of the past, wars fought, lives lost, survival paid in blood. Humanity had not wanted this war, but it had been delivered to their doorstep. Now the galaxy would learn what Earth had already known for millennia, that survival was not enough. As night fell, she looked up at the stars. They no longer seemed distant, no longer indifferent. They were paths, roads humanity would soon walk, armed with a unity and resolve no one could undo. She whispered, not to the stars, not to her enemies, but to herself, "We are awake now." And in that quiet admission, the future of the galaxy changed forever.